Detailed summary of Good Girl, Bad Blood. Good Girl, Bad Blood is a thrilling and psychologically profound sequel to Holly Jackson's best-selling novel, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. It plunges the reader back into the seemingly quiet and idyllic, yet deeply secretive and dark town of Fairview. At the heart of the story is the familiar protagonist, Pippa Fitz-Amobi, Pip, who, despite her genuine desire to step away from dangerous investigations, is forced to re-enter a world of crime that tests her moral principles and compels her to confront new, even more brutal realities. This book not only unfolds a new, intricate detective story, but also deeply explores the consequences of Pip's previous actions, her emotional state, and shows how easily the line between good and evil can blur when you're fighting for the truth. The setup and the unexpected request, an inevitable return to the case. After Pip successfully uncovered the complex murder of Andy Bell and cleared Sal Singh's name in the first book, her life, it seemed, should have returned to normal. Her previous investigative experience was incredibly exhausting and traumatic. She confronted deep evil lurking beneath the surface of ordinary life, and it left a significant mark on her. Pip feels drained and overwhelmed. Her main goal now is to focus on her studies, successfully complete high school, get into her dream college, and finally live a normal, peaceful teenage life. She even launches a podcast titled A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, but initially plans to use it solely to document her already closed previous case, with no intention of taking on new investigations. She yearns to distance herself from the world of crime and secrets that almost broke her. However, Pip's peace doesn't last long. An element of unpredictability re-enters her life. The anniversary of Andy Bell's disappearance is approaching, and Pip is preparing the final, concluding episode of her podcast, symbolically drawing a line under that chapter of her life. It's at this, seemingly peaceful moment, that her close friend Naomi Ward approaches her with a desperate and piercing request. Her older brother, Jamie Reynolds, has suddenly and inexplicably disappeared. Jamie had a history of problematic behavior and frequent runaways, which led the Fairview police, with their typical apathy and unwillingness to dig deeper, to quickly close the case. They simply assume he's run away again, as he has before. But Naomi is convinced that this time it's different. She feels that Jamie is truly in trouble, and her only hope is Pip, the only person who once managed to find the truth that the police ignored, and who is capable of genuinely fighting for justice. Pip initially hesitates greatly. She remembers the immense cost of her previous investigation. It was not only physically, but also psychologically exhausting, putting her life and mental health at risk. Yet, looking at Naomi's desperation and feeling that the police are once again failing her, Pip realizes she cannot stand by. Her innate sense of justice, deep empathy, and intolerance for injustice compel her to act. She decides to help, but this time, the investigation will be public. Pip decides to conduct her new investigation in the format of a live podcast, where every step, every interview, every new discovery, and every hypothesis is discussed with her listeners in real time. She hopes that such publicity will attract maximum attention to Jamie's case, help gather information from a wide audience, and compel witnesses who previously remained silent or were afraid to come forward. This format not only adds interactivity and tension to the plot, but also allows Pip to control the narrative and exert pressure on those trying to hide the truth, making their actions transparent to thousands of listeners. Jamie's disappearance and the emergence of new darker threats, plunging into Fairview's darkness. As soon as Pip begins her investigation, she quickly realizes that Jamie Reynolds' disappearance is by no means accidental or a simple runaway. Delving into his life, she discovers that it was far more complex, tangled, and dangerous than it initially appeared. She once again plunges into the hidden and dangerous layers of Fairview, where every resident, it seems, has a skeleton in their closet, and the past constantly echoes in the present, influencing current events. Jamie's dark connections, Pip begins to unravel the complex web of Jamie's life. She learns that he wasn't just an ordinary kid with a troubled past who occasionally vanished. Jamie had close ties to the local criminal underworld and, crucially for the case, was involved in drug dealing. This discovery immediately puts her on the trail of dangerous criminal structures operating in the town, indicating that his disappearance is likely connected to this illegal activity. She starts questioning his acquaintances from this environment. Addicts, dealers, and every piece of information, however fragmented, only deepens her suspicions and indicates that Jamie might have crossed paths with very dangerous individuals. Max Hastings' death and its connection to the case. Parallel to the investigation into Jamie's disappearance, another event occurs in Fairview that deeply affects Pip and adds new, chilling dimensions to the case. Max Hastings, the boy who was closely linked to the incident with Andy Bell in the first book, he assaulted her friend Kara Chen, which led to Andy's flight, and his crime was cynically covered up by influential people, suddenly dies. His death is initially officially declared accidental, supposedly due to a drug overdose. But Pip, relying on her intuition, knowledge of past events, experience with police disregard for truth, and insider information she gathers through her podcast, suspects that his death is by no means accidental and is likely closely connected to Jamie's disappearance. She begins to see how the threads of these two, seemingly separate, cases intertwine, and realizes that there's something bigger behind these events than just an accident. Max's death, as a key figure in covering up crimes and having many enemies, serves as an alarming warning sign for Pip, pointing to a larger, hidden threat. Anonymous threats and escalating danger. As Pip's investigation gains momentum, she begins to receive anonymous, increasingly brutal, and encrypted messages and threats. These messages clearly indicate that someone is very closely monitoring her every move and actively trying to obstruct her investigation. These threats become increasingly personal and menacing, starting to involve her loved ones and her own safety, indicating that Pip is getting dangerously close to something. She feels that she's being watched, that her life is at risk, and this forces her to act more cautiously, but at the same time it only strengthens her determination to uncover the truth, no matter what. She understands that silence is not an option, and the only way to protect herself and others is to expose the perpetrators. Uncovering the shocking truth and the criminal network, exposing a horrifying evil. Pip, delving into the darkest corners of Fairview, gradually begins to see that Jamie's disappearance and Max Hastings' death are part of one large, horrifying scheme. She uncovers a complex, long-standing criminal network that permeates the seemingly quiet town, revealing that Fairview has a much darker and more twisted side than its residents would like to admit. Human trafficking and kidnapping. It turns out that an organized criminal group is operating in Fairview, engaged in a horrific business, human trafficking. They specialize in kidnapping young girls and boys for sale. Max Hastings, it is revealed, was not just an assaulter whose crime was covered up by influential individuals. He was one of the key accomplices in this network, actively supplying merchandise, young, vulnerable victims, for their criminal purposes. The motive for Jamie's disappearance, Jamie Reynolds, being involved in drug dealing, accidentally stumbled upon information about this horrifying activity and about local house parties that were actually meeting places for criminals where human trafficking took place. He learned too much, seeing something he shouldn't have seen, and tried to expose them. That's why he was kidnapped, to silence him and prevent disclosure. The criminals planned to sell him, like other victims, getting rid of a potential witness. Leonard Fallow, the main antagonist, Pip, using her deductive skills, intuition, and tireless work, tracks down the main antagonist, the leader of this criminal organization, Lenny Fallow. At first glance, he seems like an ordinary, inconspicuous, even benevolent resident of Fairview, which only underscores his perverse skill in hiding his crimes. He was a master manipulator, using his reputation to deflect suspicion, and mercilessly dealt with anyone who tried to expose him or his network. Pip realizes that she has encountered a very intelligent, calculating, and extremely dangerous adversary who will stop at nothing to protect his secrets and his criminal enterprise. She understands that she is pursuing not just a criminal but a true predator. The climax, the rescue operation, and profound consequences, the price of truth and Pip's transformation. Pip, having gathered enough evidence and pieced together all the fragments of information, realizes that she must act immediately. Time is running out, and the lives of Jamie and other captive victims are in mortal danger. She makes the risky decision to use her podcast as a powerful platform to expose Leonard Fallow's criminal network. She publishes all the facts, evidence, and testimony she has gathered, providing the public with a complete picture of the horrific crimes. This is the only way to force the police to act and to draw maximum attention to the case, as the official authorities had not taken Jamie's disappearance seriously until then. Her actions lead to a dramatic and extremely tense climactic operation, during which the police, under pressure from the public and the irrefutable evidence collected by Pip, conduct raids. Leonard Fallow and his accomplices are arrested, and his criminal network crumbles. Jamie Reynolds is found alive, though severely traumatized physically and psychologically, but he returns home, and his family is reunited. Other victims also receive help and a chance for healing, and Fairview gets an opportunity to cleanse itself of this deeply hidden evil. However, this victory comes at an incredibly high price for Pip. She once again confronts the terrible cruelty and darkness of the human soul, which proves to be even deeper than she could have imagined. This experience leaves deep and irreversible scars on her psyche. Her faith in justice and the fundamental goodness of people is shaken. She begins to understand that the world is not black and white, and her own moral compass is put to a severe test. Pip experiences profound emotional exhaustion, seeing how far people are willing to go in their crimes, and how difficult it is to fight against this. She realizes that even victory may not bring complete peace. Good Girl, Bad Blood concludes on a deeply introspective and somewhat somber note. Pip realizes that she cannot simply abandon the fight for truth and justice, as the world constantly needs those who are willing to expose hidden crimes when others turn away or are powerless. She witnesses how justice can be slow, blind, and ineffective. However, she also understands that this fight could break her. The line between her image as a good girl and bad blood, meaning the moral compromises, psychological traumas, and risks she has to take, doesn't just blur, it almost disappears. Pip realizes that by immersing herself in the world of crime, she herself changes, transforming into someone who is willing to go to extreme lengths for the truth, even if it means crossing a line and sacrificing a part of herself. The book leaves the reader with the feeling that evil will always find a way to manifest, and the only thing that can stand against it is the determination of people like Pip, even if it means they themselves have to descend into darkness. Her final decision not to stop, despite everything, hints at further, even more complex challenges to come.